This is Ultimate Stormclaw. What that means is I've tested every last little thing that I can think of for Season 9, and this is the strongest result I could come to. Stormclaw is clearing Pit 90+. I've personally cleared at Pit 91, and I believe with good optimization and a good player, this could do up to Pit 100. It can also solo all T4 content, including every single boss, which is what you're watching right now. It's very good in every content type, especially ones that involve a lot of enemies, such as Infernal Hordes. And the only place the build falls off a little bit is on bossing, but you're not going to feel those effects unless you're in Pit 85 or higher. So if you're just looking to play Stormclaw for nostalgia's sake, or you've never had a chance to play it before, this is a great time to do so. You won't be rank 1 on the Pit leaderboards, but you're going to have a lot of fun, and it feels really good to play. Now I'm going to break down all the details for you guys, but if you enjoy my content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and drop by my Twitch at twitch.tv/screamhard. Now first, let me go through my gear, and then we'll look at what I recommend. Alright, so this is the gear that I used to clear Pit 91. We've got a 1 GA Tempest Roar, a 1 GA Shroud with the wrong GA, 2 GA Pangorgers with a good passive, 1 GA Pants with the basic skills, 1 GA Boots, but it's also got a max passive, very important, a Beastly Crone. However, keep in mind that it's actually not even useful to get a GA on the chance for Stormstrike to hit twice, because you'll basically cap out without that. So personally, I'd rather have a max passive and lose that GA. We've got a 1 GA Amulet, which I finally rolled the full Envenom on. Then one of our rings is 1 GA, and the other is 2 GA. So as you can see, this is reasonable gear. We've got one really good item, and we've got a couple of decent items. So Pit 90 is what I expect most players to cap out at. But if you really wanted to optimize this build, I could definitely see somebody pushing much higher. It's also important to note that I'm only 220 on my Paragon right now, and that's not quite enough to hit everything that I actually want. Now I'm going to go through the written guide because this is the recommendation, and I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys the right recommendation and you're not reading too much into my own gear. So the link to this is under the video if you want to find it, but let's go through it. So I'm recommending Claw, Grizzly Rage, Cyclone Armor, Blood Howl, Hurricane, and Maul. I'll put some gameplay on the screen right now so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But basically, when you first get into a dungeon, you're going to be alternating between Claw and your Maul. This is going to build up stacks of Wild Heart Hunger, as well as your Quick Shift and Heightened Senses. Right afterwards, you're quickly going to activate your Grizzly Rage, and that's going to lock in most of those bonuses, but you're also going to be getting a lot of extra bonuses from being in Grizzly Rage. And it's important to do this before you hit enemies, because if you set up the build correctly, you're going to have just enough armor after you activate your Grizzly Rage and get that 30% extra. Now, once you're close to enemies, you're going to want to activate your Hurricane. You can pull enemies together with Cyclone Armor, and this is also going to reduce the damage they deal. Now, it's easiest to notice me doing this on a boss fight, so I'll show that here. But basically, you're going to want to use your Blood Howl directly after using your Earthen Bulwark. Your Earthen Bulwark is causing you to shapeshift, which helps us maintain our Wild Heart Hunger stacks. But the Blood Howl is giving us an extra 25% damage until we shapeshift. So if you use it right after your Bulwark triggers, then you're going to get that extra damage. But those Bulwark triggers are important, so we have to leave them in the build. For the Spirit Boons, we're going with Gift of the Stag, and this is contributing to our adaptability on our Amulet, which is giving us more damage based on our primary resource. For Eagle, we're going with Iron Feather, because I realize the build needs more survivability, and you want to make sure you're getting to about 10k HP, maybe a little bit more. We do have a lot of barrier, so as long as you're hitting 10k HP, you should be safe in most situations. We're also going with Avian Wrath for critical strike damage. Under Wolf, we're going with Calamity for more ultimate duration. And then for Snake, we're going with Masochistic, and this is going to be great for our sustain. We have a ton of lucky hit chance, so we're going to be healing constantly. Just a quick note on Calamity. This, plus all of the cooldown reduction on your accessories, is going to be very important for making sure you can keep your ult up, because you have to recast the ult before it runs off, or the cooldown starts. That, plus having the Rampaging Werebeast aspect. If you're not getting enough cooldown reduction, you can run Calm Before the Storm instead, but then you're not going to have your healing, so you're going to have to be very quick on those potions. For our unique items and our aspects, we're going with Tempest Roar on the helmet, Shroud of False Death on the chest, Pangorgers for the gloves, Dire Wolf's aspect on our pants, Wild Heart Hunger for our boots. Great Staff of the Crone is required, and that's our weapon. If you happen to be using this build earlier on, don't start using it until you have the Great Staff of the Crone. On our Amulet, we're running the Adaptability. On our ring, we're running Aspect of Rampaging Werebeast. This is going to give us extra damage and that extra ultimate duration. And the other ring, we're running Rabid Bear, which is converting all of our damage to poison and increasing our damage. The Dire Wolf's aspect is important to make sure you can maintain your Grizzly Rage and still use your abilities. If you don't have this on, you won't be able to use things like Claw when you use Grizzly Rage, so it's very important. The Pangorger's Gauntlets passive is activated by damaging enemies with a non-basic ability, so that's what our Hurricane is for. You're going to want to make sure that your Hurricane duration and cooldown is long enough and short enough so that you can have it up almost all the time. You're going to get that somewhat from the cooldown on your gloves, but you're also going to be getting that from the Hurricane Duration temper on your pants, as well as a skill tree passive that I'll show you later. And the Tempest Roar is what's making all of our Storm skills into Werewolf skills, which is what allows us to use things like Cyclone Armor and Hurricane during our Grizzly Rage. So also very important. For the gear stats, I have it all laid out here in the gear stats tab. And basically the way I've got it set up is the orange ones are all of the things that you should be getting your masterwork bonuses into. And then there's certain situations like on the rings where it's okay to get some bonuses into a different one. So for example, attack speed is what's preferred here, but I wouldn't mind getting the critical strike chance. Either way, you probably won't max out your attack speed or your critical strike chance fully, but maybe if you got all of your masterworks into one. So on the Tempest Roar, we're focusing the willpower and the max resource. For the Shroud, we're doing all stats and the max life. On Pain Gorgers, we're going with the ranks to basic skills, then cooldown reduction and attack speed. For the Pants, ranks to basic skills again, and we're going for willpower and max life. This max life affix is a kind of flex slot, where if you don't feel like you need the life, but you do need armor, you could go armor. If you feel like you don't need the armor, you could go all resist. And if you don't need either of those, just stick to the max life. On Wildheart Hunger, you're going to go for ranks to heightened senses. And the only other thing here that's kind of useful is the movement speed, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be capped out regardless. So ranks to heightened senses is pretty much the only important affix on these boots. You're probably not going to need the cold resist, but you'll be capped out regardless with this stat. And you're going to be capped out for your shapeshifting attack speed from the Bestial Rampage plus the Wildheart Hunger anyways. So this is also useless. On the Great Staff of the Crone, we're going for basic skills. And then if I were to choose a different one that I got masterwork bonuses into, I would allow it on my Storm Strike's chaining, but I probably wouldn't want it on the others, and definitely not on the chance for Storm Strike to hit twice, because going past 100% is not going to help you. For the amulet, the most important one is Toxic Claws. But if you get an amulet that has either a GA Toxic Claws or a GA Envenom, those are pretty much equal. The only difference between how useful they are is that the Envenom is less useful because you have to crit to activate it, whereas the Toxic Claws is 10% all the time. I would also be fine with my bonuses splitting into Envenom. In fact, I might change this on the written guide so that you guys know that's an option. For your third stat, it could be Willpower or Quick Shift. I think both of them are pretty solid, and it's basically impossible to get a perfect amulet, so don't stress it too much. In fact, this slot could always be used to help you with other things. It could be max life if you need it, total armor, all resistance, extra attack speed, extra crit chance, whatever you need. For the rings, we're focusing on attack speed and critical strike chance. And then we're getting either willpower or maximum life. The willpower is going to be damage. The maximum life is going to be survivability. So pick your poison. I should also mention that for me to hit my resistances while being optimal, I needed a ring that had fire resist and a ring that had shadow resistance, because you're getting cold resistance from the boots and you're getting poison and lightning resistance from your tree. Now for the tempers, on your pants, you're going to go with total armor. This one was pretty important because I'm just barely going over my armor and I needed a good roll on it. Like I said, if you have to, you can always roll an armor on the item, but preferably you can hit it without that. You also need a good hurricane duration if you're going to keep your hurricane up constantly. And then for all three accessories, we're going with Werewolf critical strike chance or Storm critical strike chance. Either one's fine. In fact, Storm might be more widely used for other builds, so maybe go with Storm. I'll probably change that for you guys, but either one is basically the same thing. And then for the other temper, it's going to be Grizzly Rage cooldown reduction. And I found that I need all three of these to be reasonably decent for me to hit my perfect cooldown. So if you happen to get a low roll, maybe you'll need a masterwork bonus in one of them for the time being. For the runes, I've tested these a lot, and the ones that I've come to that I like the most is Seer with Q, and this is going to give you your bulwark almost constantly. There's about a half of a second after it falls off before it activates again, which is really nice. And then for my other ones, I'm going with Igni Gar. This is just going to keep our critical strike chance high. And I tested this versus other things like the 100% increased damage, and I was just feeling much better clear times on this one, even though the other one seemed like the better choice in terms of damage. But you have to cast a core skill in order to activate it, so it was kind of taking extra steps. But if you're somebody who likes to run Shred on the build anyways, it could be an option for you. For the seasonal skills, we're going with Disintegrate. This is actually a change I made. The previous one that I was using pulled enemies together, and it gave us cooldown reduction, which was nice. But the thing with Disintegrate is it makes the executes so much more efficient. You're able to execute things constantly instead of waiting for a cooldown and eventually executing something and potentially missing the window altogether. This is just really nice for keeping those consistent executes. We're still keeping it on Claw. We're still using Corrosive Vapor for the infusion. We're also using the Bloody Charm. That's what's giving us the execute. But another nice thing about Disintegrate is that the threshold for non-elite enemies is doubled, so we're actually able to kill them even faster with this. We're using Bottled Wind for more survivability. and then Fractured Core to remove enemy damage reduction. This one's really good, and you'll definitely notice this if you apply it. For our gems, we're going with Sapphire on the armor. We're putting runes in our weapons, so none there. And then we're using Scornful Light and Idle from Below. These are both going to increase our damage, and the Idle from Below is also going to increase our max life. But another thing it does that's nice is it spawns enemies in, and those enemies can spawn on bosses, which gives us targets to chain between and makes us do more damage to the boss. And I still have Elemental Brand here. This is somewhat useful because it applies poison and allows us to remove the vampiric effect, but you do have an option here to use this slot for survivability instead. So it's definitely something to keep in mind if you need it. I have a whole bunch more details in the written guide if you guys want to go through them, including the attack speed breakdowns, mercenary info, and the changelog in case you missed some previous versions. For our skills, we're maxing out our Storm Strike. We're going to be grabbing Fierce Storm Strike so we can apply Vulnerable. We're going with Claw, and we're going for Wild Claw. And if you don't know how this build works, the Grey Staff of the Crone is making it to where our Claw is also casting our Storm Strike. But the bulk of our damage is coming from the Storm Strike, which is why we don't invest points into Claw. But it still does decent damage, and you're going to notice that you have like 20 plus points in Claw just from getting the ranks to basic skills on your gear. But just keep in mind that the priority is Storm Strike. Down in the next category, we're getting a maxed out Heart of the Wild. This is going to give us more max Spirit, which increases our damage from our adaptability. We're also maxing out Predatory Instinct for more critical strike chance. Down the next area, we're going to be getting our Cyclone Armor and our Preserving Cyclone Armor. This is what allows us to pull enemies in. We're maxing out Backlash, and we're maxing out Vigilance. Keep in mind these are only active when you use defensive skills, which is part of why you want to cast them often. Another reason you want to cast them often is because with our Blood Howl, we're getting Innate Blood Howl, and this is increasing our damage by 25% while we're in werewolf form until we shapeshift. So basically until the Earthen Bulwark is activated. Moving down from here, we're going with Feral Aptitude and Nature's Reach. The Nature's Reach is optimal. I feel like you can get more value out of this damage-wise than other things. However, if you wanted more survivability, then you'd put those points into Heightened Senses. That's also going to give you more movement speed, so it can be useful for that as well. Down from here, we're going to grab our Hurricane, and we're getting Savage Hurricane. This is just going to reduce enemy damage, but keep in mind that Hurricane is very important for the Pain Gorger's damage, which is why we're grabbing the 3 ranks from Endless Tempest to extend the duration. We're also going to max out Toxic Claws and Envenom, and these are going to give you a ton of damage. Down from here, we're going to max out Defiance, Natural Disaster, and Resonance. Keep in mind that Natural Disaster is only here for bosses when they're staggered, but we really need the extra damage on bosses, so I felt it was necessary. But again, these points can be taken out and put into something like Heightened Senses. In fact, if you really wanted to go defensive, you could pull out of both the Nature's Reach and Natural Disaster and go for Defensive Posture and Heightened Senses. We're also maxing out Catastrophe, and this is going to have about 40% uptime, so it's fairly decent damage. We're maxing out Quick Shift for even more damage, maxing out our Grizzly Rage for that extra armor, and getting both additional points. Finally, for our Keystone passive, we're going with Bestial Rampage. Alright, for the Paragon boards, we are going with Keeper on the starter board. Moving up from there, we're going to be applying the Heightened Malice board and putting the Spirit Glyph. To the left from here, we're attaching the Constricting Tendrils board, or Sinister Tendrils as it says here, and we're going to be putting Earth and Sky. Moving back across, we're going to be putting on the Thunderstruck board, and here we're getting Fang and Claw. Finally, moving down from there, we're attaching Lust for Carnage, and here we're putting the Headhunter Glyph. For the Mercenaries, I recommend going with Rahir for the All Resist. It's unlikely, but if you do end up needing the armor instead of the All Resist, you can go this way. And then if you're at the point where you're maxed out on attack speed in your build anyways, it's better to go with Aldkin here and go for the Field of Languish. Otherwise, you can go with Varyana and go for the attack speed. But as you can see with my in-game board versus the recommended one, I'm missing a lot of points here. So I still have quite a bit of damage and survivability that I can get out of this board, not to mention some aspects and stuff that I can increase. So it's possible that I'll get back on this build later in the season once I have more levels, and maybe we'll see if we can't push it a little higher. But for right now, that's all I've got for you guys, and I hope you enjoyed the build. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Daddy Druid out.
Subscribe to Scream Heart. He's more than an old fart. He makes lots of fun builds. I promise his streams chill. He should probably be faster. Come watch this disaster.